kids would be at home with parents during parental leave and then go to daycare, childcare, and get the sniffles, and they had a certain fever and they couldn't go to the center. What makes it nice with the au pair is au pair can work a set amount of hours, but they live in your home, right? So they are able to take care of your child and you don't have to worry about the sickness.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Childcare Channel, a space designed to inform, inspire, and innovate in the childcare space. In today's episode, we will interview someone who will share with us about an area we have not yet covered in the channel, the world of au pairs. Before I bring up our guest, let me tell you a little bit about her experience. Sarah Vogel is a local childcare consultant, or LCC, for cultural care au pair, a leader in childcare and cultural exchange for more than 30 years. As an LCC, Sarah provides year-round support to host families and au pairs in her community and also consults with families considering the au pair programs to help them determine if hosting an au pair is right for them. Sarah joined Cultural Care in 2017 and has been a member of Cultural Care's Leadership League since 2019. League members are recognized for being in the top 10% for excellence in customer service, program compliance, and service to Cultural Care's Kids First Foundation. Prior to joining Cultural Care, Sarah was a co-founder of DC Baby, an organization that supported new and expecting parents in Washington, D.C. Sarah lives in Southern California today with her family and enjoys volunteering, exercising, and traveling. Her next destination is Argentina, where she'll travel with her Cultural Care colleagues and reconnect with former au pairs. And now, without further ado, please help me in welcoming Sarah to the channel. Hello there, Sarah. How are you doing?
Hi, Yane. I'm well. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to connect with you and to learn about you. This topic of au pairs is quite new to me, so I'm really excited to ask you some questions, which I hope will also help our audience to evaluate if an au pair program versus a childcare preschool program is right for them. And so I want to turn it over to you for you to tell us a little bit about your story. What's Sarah about? How did you get into this whole au pair world?
I became a parent in 2014, and at that time, I was just really interested in connecting with other moms and other parents, learning about the options available to me. I met a friend who was working for an au pair agency at a time, and I said, "Well, I've heard of au pairs, but I don't know much about it." And she said, "Well, why don't we can chat and talk more? And I think it would really be great at promoting the program, because it's about families, it's about community building, and it's about cultural exchange." And I did study abroad when I was in college and have traveled to different countries for school, for fun, and also for service projects. And so we met and chatted, and that was my first introduction to the au pair program. So for those unfamiliar with the term, au pair is actually a French term that means on par. And most people know of it as an opportunity for a young person to live with a family, whether they're in the same country or they're from another country, and experience culture. And over time, I was mentioning to Ian earlier, with some government involvement, it's become a very structured program that offers a childcare option to families that are interested in cultural exchange and also interested in flexibility. So I joined Cultural Care as a local consultant in 2017 when I was living in Washington, D.C. And what's been great about this for me professionally is as we've moved a couple of times as a family, I've been able to continue this role working in communities in Utah and now in California. So I'm really enjoying the opportunity to support families in different parts of the country, meet young people from all over the world, and also, spend time with my family in new places. And I tell my au pairs, I'm new to this state, and so we're learning together. So it's a great program.
Okay, so that's great. So, okay, let's back up a little bit to how the au pair works, particularly in this program. And the reason why you move is because you need to be in close proximity to the au pairs, and that's why your job has you moving.
So we actually have moved for my husband's job, but what I have appreciated about the program and working for Cultural Care is that they've given me an opportunity to continue in this role. But as part of the government involvement with an au pair program, the Department of State does require a consultant to live within 60 miles of each host family and au pair in the United States. So, Cultural Care has consultants in 48 states. And what that opportunity is it's local support. So, if an au pair is going through a difficult time, I can meet her for a coffee, we can talk. And also, as part of those requirements, I meet every host family in my area that is considering hosting an au pair, just to help them learn more about the program, make sure they're a suitable host family. And then I also do monthly get togethers with my au pairs to experience different cultural events. Like we went to a holiday parade for Christmas time. We made s'mores, which is not, always something you would eat in another country. We've gone, pumpkin picking, things that are kind of traditional American activities. And so I like to provide that local support and, promote the program where I'm living.
I love it. I love it. And so I want to go deeper on this cultural aspect on how do you even come into contact with these people? How do they find you? How do you pair them with the family? So tell me a little bit about that process.
Sure. What makes cultural care special is that we have offices all over the world. So our United States office, our biggest office is in the Boston area, but we have offices in every country where we recruit au pairs. And so some of my former au pairs actually now I call colleagues because they work in their country office. So often a young person will attend a career fair or go to a panel discussion that our offices will have to learn more about the program. And actually, au pairs go through a pretty intense process to become an au pair candidate. So they'll do a personal interview, they have to fill out an application and provide references. They make videos for their potential families to get to know them a little bit better. They have a health screening. So it's a very long process. And it is more common in other countries, I think, for young people to take a year or two to live in another country, improve their English, see what another place is like to live. Um, and so the United States office works with our offices in 29 countries to connect and say, okay, we have these candidates from France who are interested, and we put them in a matching database. And so families are able to use the database. And this is an analogy we use all the time. It's a little bit like online dating. So if you say, oh, I would love to expose my children to the French language, you can search for French speakers. And then there's also kind of lifestyle things. Like we ask the au pairs if they're comfortable living with pets. And if so, what kinds of pets are they comfortable with? Or if they're a vegetarian, that's something they would put in their profile. Or if the family really wants a vegetarian au pair, or if there's a religious preference, that's all in there. So we really try our best to get to know our families as family units. And that's, I meet families all the time and get to know their kids and meet their dogs and cats and all that good stuff. And then my colleagues overseas meet these young women and men and get to know them and help them build a really robust profile. And then the families and au pairs start to connect. And we also help with that process as well. But we try to make as many successful pairings as possible.
I love it. So let me ask you something. If I am a new parent, right,
Mhm.
and I am considering between putting my child in a childcare center or preschool and having an au pair, can you go over what the main differences are and pros and cons of each?
Sure. I think there are pros and cons of hosting an au pair at different ages in your child's life. If you're an expecting parent, what I love about the au pair program is the flexibility. So more often than not, I remember, especially when my children were a bit younger, hearing about like daycare and sickness. Kids would be at home with parents during parental leave and then go to daycare, childcare, and get the sniffles and they had a certain fever and they couldn't go to the center. And so the parents were kind of scrambling for childcare. What makes it nice with the au pair is the au pair can work a set amount of hours, but they live in your home, right? So there's not necessarily other children or maybe just a sibling or two. So they are able to take care of your child and you don't have to worry about the sickness or if there's professional development time off. So you have those barriers set out. So a lot of my parents that I work with that have younger children, they really appreciate having that flexibility. And then sometimes there are preschools with, younger 2 and 3 year olds where it's only 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. Well, that doesn't cover the childcare that the family needs. And so an au pair can get the child ready to go to preschool, get them to preschool, and maybe do the child's laundry while they're at preschool or prepare lunch, and then come back. And then the child eats and has a nap, and then the parents' childcare is covered. So they get that educational component and also consistent childcare.
Okay, I love that. So you could have a hybrid approach where you have an au pair and then you also have the child in some type of preschool program.
Right. So especially with children, when you have multiple children, right? So I'll
Mhm.
just use my children as an example. I have two children. They're 2 years apart. So my 2 year old went to preschool 2 mornings a week for a few hours. Um, and if I had an au pair at that point, my au pair could have taken my son to preschool while I was at home with the baby, and then, I would leave for work when she got back, and then she would pick them up, and then, go about their afternoon routines, and then so nobody's routine is disrupted, and it's also great as they get into, older elementary ages where, they have winter break that's longer than the time off the parents have, or, these different days off or snow days right now. Most of the country, we're having the issues with the weather. So it is really nice to have that flexibility.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you mentioned earlier that the United States is one of the only countries that you know of that's actually involved in regulating
Mhm.
different areas for au pairs. Can you go over about how that works? And especially if somebody is considering to hire an au pair, what do they need to have in mind as far as regulations?
Sure. So, yes, the US Department of State regulates the au pair program. Um, and there are agencies that are certified to sponsor au pairs. So, sometimes people ask me, well, I have a family friend that lives in Mexico. Can their niece come over and live with us? Well, technically, that young person would need to go through an and so there's that regulation piece, and then there's also the regulation piece that goes along with the family and the services that the au pair can provide and what the au pair receives in return. So, an au pair can only work 45 hours a week, and they can only work 10 hours a day. They can work weekends, but they do need to have at least one full weekend off per month. So it would be Friday afternoon to Monday morning. Our agency does also require that au pairs have 1.5 consecutive days off per week. Another regulation, which is part of the cultural exchange component, and part I really think is neat, is that our au pairs all take college classes in the US. And so they're required to complete 6 credit hours or 72 non credit hours at a US accredited institution. So a family would have to help pay for that, and it's up to $500. But then au pairs take all sorts of classes. Some want to improve their English. I've had au pairs take psychology, business, things that you and I might have studied in college as well. They are required also to have 2 weeks of vacation time, which is great. And they don't make a salary per se. So there is a stipend that they receive from a family, and that is mandated also by the State Department. And that's 195.75 per week or higher. So that doesn't cover their food. So the family, when it would be like bringing in another family member. So you're um, adding their preferred items to the grocery list. You're providing them with a room. If they're driving, you're providing them with car insurance, supporting their cell phone bills. So that money is meant to go towards kind of little items they want to buy, or if they're going out with their friends or traveling. Um, so those protections are in place for them. And one important point I just thought of is au pairs pay their own taxes. So they um, get a social security number, just like you and I did when we were quite small. And then they set up bank accounts. And then I always do kind of a meeting with my au pairs in March or February. And we go over the forms, and they fill out and they send in a check just like you and I do to the IRS every year. So that is nice. And our au pairs also have health insurance through the agency. So they pay a fee when they sign up to be an au pair, and then they have US health insurance, which is great. And it's great for the families because they don't have to worry about the au pair not having insurance.
That's wonderful. And how long does an au pair normally? Because I understand this is more of an exchange where they come
Mhm.
and so they get to also benefit by being in a new country, by having a host family, right? Even though they are helping with the children and all of that, but they also get to experience a new culture in a more contained environment than when you move on your own and having to, find your own rent and like all of those things, right? When you move to a new place.
Right.
So how long normally on average would you say an au pair does this for? Is it just 1 year, 2 years? How does that work?
Sure. So an au pair can hold the au pair visa for up to 2 years. So most au pairs start out with about a year, and then they have an option to extend their visa. And so they can extend their visa for 6 months, 9 months, or a year. So I've had people do all variations of both. And sometimes an au pair will spend a year with one family, like if they were in California where I am, and then they want to experience living on the East Coast, they could find a family who lives on the East Coast and live there for a year. So it really provides some flexibility to them as well.
Awesome. And what if a family wants an au pair for 5 years? Do they have to switch up au pairs?
Yeah. So I've had many families. I was just talking to one today. They're on au pair number three. Um, and they actually parents seem to really like it because it gives their children the opportunity to be exposed to different caregivers, be exposed to different cultures. Um, and so they understand and that's a cycle and it goes through. And it's often like, if you had a babysitter who's a college student in the past, they graduate, move on. But they often stay in touch. Like I was just watching a video of a colleague who went to her au pair's wedding, her au pair from several years ago, and they went to her home country and kids got to go to the wedding. So it's fun. But yes, they do
Oh,
move.
I love that. So it really creates this environment of community and
Sure.
family. And so you're literally sharing the home space with,
Yes.
well, let's face it, a stranger, right?
Right.
You are also a stranger to them.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where there's such a cultural enrichment component that benefits both parties because the kids benefit by learning. The au pair is also being exposed to the culture of their host family and the foods and the living and everything. So, I mean, I don't have any kids, but if I did, I think that would be a really great option to have support.
We have a cookbook that we send to every family before they welcome an au pair that has recipes from all the countries where we have offices. And the au pairs and host families do match with each other. They do pick each other. So they are communicating via video chat or letters or emails, phone calls. So they are getting to know each other. And one thing I do in my job, which is part of the State Department, is I do go to homes and look at the bedroom where the au pair is going to be living to make sure that it's suitable, that it's safe, that it's welcoming. Because we do want the au pairs to feel welcomed and to feel like they're living in a safe environment. But yeah, it's great for the families too, learning about new traditions. The World Cup, that just happened has been really fun. You see au pairs will bring jerseys for kids from their home countries, or they'll have a party to watch together. And it's really great to see that cultural exchange happening.
Oh, I love that. And what about with the au pairs and the type of, let's say, educational formation that they can provide to the kids? Is it more just the role of caregiving, or do they actually get some type of training on things they can teach the little ones?
So it depends. In terms of training, our au pairs do go through an online training program where they learn something about safety, which is CPR training and first aid training, which is invaluable to everyone. And they also learn about American parenting and kind of social norms about childhood here in the United States. And every au pair has different childcare experience coming in. So some of my au pairs have been teachers, some of them have been nurses or worked in preschool. So they come with a variety of childcare experience. And others, if you are caring for a child under two, our agency requires that you have 200 hours of documented experience caring for that age group and also like detailing what kind of tasks you've done or if you've been alone with those children. Um, we don't have our au pairs teach like a particular curriculum, but we do give them resources like if you want to do from your country or coloring sheets or things. And sometimes families and au pairs mutually agree that the child will speak or that au pair will speak the language of their home country with the child.
Mhm.
So they want their child to be exposed to different language, or sometimes they'll buy a workbook. Like I have a family now that the father is Italian, and the children are learning Italian, so the au pair is helping them with a workbook every day, and they're in like kindergarten, first grade age. And then also doing kind of fun games or, playing games or singing songs, things. So um, there are some really good Spanish speakers, Italian speakers, French speakers that are quite young because they've been exposed to au pairs.
And let me ask you something. Are au pairs always exclusively from other countries? Or can there be one from the United States wanting to serve families in the United States?
They are all not from the United States. There are certainly nanny agencies and things where folks will come from other parts of the country to live in a different area, but all of our au pairs are not from the United States.
Gotcha. So that's one of the huge differentiators of an au
Yeah.
pair, which is you get that cultural
Mhm.
experience, right? So
Yep.
that I love that. I love that. And so if I were a new parent, or if I have children, and I listen to this episode and I'm all of a sudden interested in finding out more, maybe even hiring an au pair myself from a different country, how does that process work?
Sure. Well, the first thing to do would be to, speak to somebody through an agency, figure out the right for you, and then you would register with an agency. So I'm happy to speak to anybody. So you can visit my website, which is culturalcare.com/SVOGEL, and go in there and request more information or for me to contact you. And then I also have an Instagram, and my handle is Au Pair Connector, where I post about different activities I've done with my au pairs and different celebrations we've had. And feel free to send me a message through that as well. And I'd be happy to find a time to talk and just see if it's the right fit for you and your family.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. And
Yeah.
Sarah, how long have you been doing this with working with the au pairs directly?
5.5 years this month, actually.
That's amazing. And more or less, how many have you had the privilege of working with so far?
Oh, goodness. 150, I'd say.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Could you share? Because we love stories, right? Could you
Sure.
maybe share? Obviously, if you're allowed, could you share any sort of more personal story of maybe a particular au pair that stands out, and share with us a little bit about their story, how they came about, maybe how what they
Sure.
learned. That
Yeah,
would
no,
be really nice.
I had a wonderful au pair, and she's from Spain. Her name is Alba. And she came to the United States and lived in Maryland. Alba worked with a family that had 3 children. They have twins, and they were about 2 years old at the time. And then they also have a son who was about 8 or 9 at the time, and he has autism. So she embraced the role and really became part of their family. And they would go to the beach together and did all sorts of great activities with the kids. And she became close with me. And she's an incredible artist. And Alba made my children drawings of cartoon characters that they liked and framed them and gave them to them for Christmas. So they had those and they're so sweet. And then Alba decided that for her second year, she wanted to go to another family and experience another part of the United States. So she lived in Texas for a year. And now Alba is living in Ireland and she's teaching there, partially because she was able to improve her English and gain some different unique childcare experiences. And we still stay in touch and she's great. So that's somebody who's just, I always know Alba and think about her. And I have a couple of colleagues now, Mo in South Africa. And I remember when they were au pairs, and a couple of my au pairs have had babies, so it's so exciting to see them start their own families. So it's a really great program.
I love it. I love it. And in the case of Alba, it sounds like she really took the opportunity to perfect her English while she was living
Yeah.
here.
So
And was she studying? I mean, she had to study, right? What did she study when she was living in both of the different places?
Um, she studied she took a writing course, an English writing course when she was in Maryland. I'm not sure what she studied in Texas, but I believe education. I also have an au pair who decided to stay in the United States. She was able to get a student visa from Brazil, and she's now a preschool teacher. She got a degree in early childhood education at an American college, and now she's a preschool teacher.
Wow, I love that. That's great. I'm really happy to see
Yeah.
that level of integration, because I do believe that the United States is a wonderful country full of opportunity. And, it's really a melting pot. So you have people from all over the place. Myself, I am actually from Cuba. I
Okay.
wasn't born here. And so it's just lovely that you have and you're part of such a program that allows for this level of integration to happen and for this exchange. to take place. So that's great. What would you say is your favorite part of the work that you do?
I love seeing when families and au pairs form a special bond and like the kids are all into they all are having a great time together and seeing pictures. Like I have a family and au pair in Las Vegas right now. I can't wait to hear how the trip went. Um and just have knowing that it's mutually beneficial, right? The family's getting the cultural exchange, the au pair is getting the cultural exchange, childcare issues are out of the way in terms of like scrambling for childcare. So I love seeing when those matches are made.
And is there ever an occasion, or has there ever been an occasion where the match hasn't quite worked out?
Yeah, certainly that happens. It's just a fact of life, and sometimes things don't work out. And that's part of my job too, is helping navigate those situations. What we're really trying to do is make it as seamless of a transition as possible for the family and the au pair. And au pairs sometimes will choose to go home, sometimes they'll choose to find another family. And then families sometimes decide to not stay with the program, and sometimes they find another great au pair and decide to go that route. So that happens, but we really focus on communication as a key to avoiding that, or to making sure it goes as seamless as possible.
Yes, I mean, of course, this is human nature, right? So sometimes it's even like you mentioned earlier the analogy of online dating. Well, that's precisely what you
Yeah,
do. You find people, you go on dates with them, and then it either works or it doesn't, or it works for a certain period of time, and then it doesn't work anymore. And so, yes, of course, that's a fact of life. So I'm glad to see that you all have systems in place to be able to manage the situation, and communication is the key to everything in
right.
relationships. So I'm
Yeah.
glad to see that that's a part of it. Sarah, what would you say the next 3 to 5 years are looking like in this environment of au pairs? Is anything gonna be changing? Because so much is changing, right?
Yeah.
Technologically speaking, culturally speaking, politically, there's a lot of changes that are happening. Do you see any sort of trends taking place, or what big changes that you might anticipate?
One change I know is going to happen, I'm just not sure when, is that the State Department is revisiting the regulations for the program. That happens every 10 years or so. So I think there will be an increase to the stipend for the au pairs that's partially related to inflation and some of the changes in our economy. I'm not sure about other regulations. There might be some sick time added in because right now, sick time isn't counted, but I know that sometimes that's been a challenge. Our company is expanding the countries where we recruit. So we're moving a little bit more into Eastern Europe, like Latvia, Slovakia. So I'm seeing more au pairs coming from there. We're also expanding our South American presence. We have a lot of au pairs coming from Argentina. And COVID really was a difficult time for au pairs and host families. We had a lot of au pairs waiting to come to the United States and waiting for visas. So that's starting to improve and becoming easier. Our agency had its highest number of au pairs ever last year. So, and we only have a certain number of visas per year, and we were hopeful that the State Department might increase because I think as families are, with COVID, people are reconsidering some of their choices and, do we want to have the commute and have the daycare? Or are we working from home and we have this au pair at the house and, or we're going to move to another state, but our au pair can come with us because that's allowed, having those, options. So,
And financially speaking, right? If I'm a parent trying
yeah.
to decide, do I go the route of childcare? I mean, preschool? Do I go the route of au pair? What's more or less the financial comparison there?
It all depends on where you live and how many children you have. Um, Sometimes people think au pair is more affordable, but it really depends on where you're living too. So there's an agency fee that you would pay the agency, and then in addition to the weekly stipend for the au pair, and also her expenses. I like to tell people it's about $425 per week. But if you have four children, right, that is not that much. But if you, have one child and you live in an area where a daycare center is not as expensive, that might be the better option for you. So it really is kind of dependent on your family.
Okay, great, wonderful. All right, well, this has been amazing, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing all of these amazing facts about an au pair program. And we have something here on the channel that we like to do, which is a little game we play called Three in a Beat, where I ask you three questions and you answer in either one word or one sentence maximum. But before
Sure.
we play that, I want to encourage you watching us here today that if you have liked everything that Sarah has been sharing, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel because that will help us bring on more people like Sarah who have something important and useful to share for those in the childcare space. So, Sarah, are you ready to play 3 in a beat?
I'm ready.
First question. What is the most interesting place you've ever visited?
India.
Ooh, I love it. What is something worth fighting for?
Love.
Love. Can't go wrong with that. And what is the last book that you read?
The Giving Tree. That's one of my favorite books. I try to read it every year.
The Given Tree. I love it. And it's not
Yeah.
something that you read to small children too, right?
Yeah. Have you read it?
You know what? I think I did several years ago, but
Yeah.
now that you mention it, I'm going to read it again because I'm sure I'll catch different things. You know, it's like whenever you read something or you watch something, you're at a certain level of consciousness. And then
Yeah.
some time passes and then you learn new stuff. You're a different level of
Yeah.
consciousness. And then you go back and you see the same piece of work and you just get different things. So I need to go back to the Given Tree. I know it's a great story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Are there any last words you'd like to share before we disconnect for the day?
Just, for parents who are thinking about childcare, just explore the options available to you because there might be something like the program that you haven't heard of or you don't know anybody who's used that might be a good fit for your family.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much once again. And you watching, thank you for being here with us and sharing your time with us at the Childcare Channel. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with your friends and anybody who might be a parent or might be a childcare business owner or anybody else in the childcare space that could benefit from the content that we share. Sarah, thanks again, and we will see you in the next episode.